Hi there. My name's Yionoulis, and I am the host of the brand new podcast, Empire Builders, scaling success one location at a time. This is a podcast dedicated to talking to the founders and the current leadership of those large multi-location brands that you see every single day where you eat and shop at. And we want to find out from these guys, why this business, right? Why of all the things you could do in the world, you chose to do this? We're going to learn what their challenges were at the beginning, what almost broke them. We're going to learn what they're facing today. And as always, we're going to end the show with a wonderful war story. That's one of those stories where you go, I can't believe we got through this. It was insanity, and hopefully they always end with a nice little laugh. So I can't tell you how excited I am to bring you these interviews with these amazing guests and just stoke that entrepreneurial flame that we all have to learn what it took to kind of get where they are today and how they got successful. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing these wonderful interviews with you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Empire Builders podcast. This is a podcast that's dedicated to people who are building or are running empires, their own businesses that are doing great work. And today I have another wonderful guest joining me today. It's Mark Schnurman. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Tommy. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show today. I'm really excited to interview you. I like to get right into it. The first question is please tell me about your role and your company.
Yeah, so what I am is the founder and chief dishwasher and bottle washer. So do a little bit of everything. What we do, the name of the company is The Perfect Franchise. And so I was a franchise consultant for a handful of years. And as a franchise consultant, we help individuals decide whether owning a business, specifically a franchise business, is something that makes sense for them. And so about a year and a half ago, I decided I wanted to build a team. And that has evolved into a big team in my own business. And now I have about, I think, 52 or 53 either employees but mostly contractors who I work with.
Wow. And what does The Perfect Franchise do?
Yeah, so the end product or service is that we consult with individuals, help them decide if franchising is right for them. We have processes and systems to go through with that. But as an organization, there are really three main things that we do. We help generate leads and people to talk to for our consultants. We train them, and then we build relationships with franchise businesses so that when we bring our clients through, we have really strong relationships and understandings with brands to refer them to.
So then, would it be fair to say that your consultants are almost like you're the franchisor and they're franchisees that are buying into your model for helping people in their areas almost? Is that like?
Yeah, franchise would be too much of a term for it, but yeah, they're for the most part, they're buying into the system and processes that we have and the methodology that we use, for sure.
Sure. Okay. So were you ever a franchisee?
Yeah, I've actually been a franchisee 2 times over. I'm still currently one with a partner. He runs the day-to-day successfully. And then I had a successful exit from another franchise business. So yeah, it's kind of like the hair club for men, right? So I believe in the product I sell.
Sure. Absolutely. One of my first jobs out of grad school was at Quiznos. It was at Quiznos in 2008. So time frame. It's the start of the economic collapse and the start of the Quiznos franchise collapse. And I was the franchise assistance manager. So it was my job to help people try to save their franchises. And I can say with confidence, I accomplished nothing. But it was actually like a second MBA, to be honest with you, because I learned so much about psychology and I learned so much about running a business and it was a very hard, sad, miserable job. But I was learning an insane amount of stuff because everyone called me when it was too late. Only a couple people called me 6-9 months, a year before they actually went out of business. They would call me literally day of, you need to send me $4,500 or they're going to evict me. And if you want to keep this store, then you got to pay this rent. And you're like, I'm not allowed to do that, sir.
Yeah. No, if you have a good franchise, your job would be great. When you have a struggling one, it's difficult. But you said something I think is important. In anything that we do, we have to get in front of it. And what happens is, like, when we work with our clients, if we don't get in front of the fears that they have, which become more profound the deeper they come into the process and the closer they get to making a decision, it's difficult. And my guess is you probably could have helped some of those franchisees if you spoke to them before they had their issues, and that's the big thing for people. Just like, ask for help when it's just starting to bubble up before it becomes too late.
Absolutely. And I would tag on to that, I think a lot of people, when they deal with if there's somebody who's going to become a franchisee, right? And let's say it's not working out for them, or they're not, whatever, they tend to want to blame the franchisor. And that's fine. Sometimes franchisors, Quiznos specifically, make bonehead, stupid decisions, and you should call them out on it, because it's that relationship of the franchisees going, no, dude, this is going to screw us over. You can't do this. And this is the reason why. Whatever, right? They should have hopefully you get with a good franchisor, but you should have a good, honest relationship. But I think a lot of people, when things start going bad, franchisees abdicate their own personal responsibility of running their business, and they just go, oh, well, the franchisor is not doing marketing right now, so I don't need to do marketing either, even though I pay them 7% for marketing. And it's like, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, that franchise, you're the one that's got the SBA loan. You're the one whose business is sitting empty right now. You need to own your business. Like, they don't own your business. You do.
That's exactly right, Tommy. And it's with anything in our lives.
Yeah.
We have to make a commitment that we're committed. You can't rely on other people for anything. And that's, a big thing that I've learned in my business. Like, anything that goes well, I have to say, great. Anything that doesn't go well, I have to look in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do differently? And, people join franchises or start their own business, and they don't realize that the commitment they need is to do whatever it takes, ethically, morally, financially, to ensure that business succeeds. And without that level of extreme commitment, probably shouldn't start your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would echo that as well, just coming from our company, right, which we have a software company. But it's like, okay, dude, there were times when, we didn't make a paycheck, and not just for like a week or two, like for months. You know what I mean? And you just have to keep going, even though it would be so much easier to quit. But that's why there's not a ton of business. You know what I mean? Like, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? Sure. You've just got to have that massive commitment and a little bit of luck that, timing works out for you, and then you can.
A lot of luck.
Good. Yeah, a lot of luck.
A lot of luck. And what I found is, it's we may get into this later, but I'll get into it now. It's directionally. Sure. What I always tell people, I didn't plan on building the business that I have built. I just knew that I wanted to have a team, whatever that meant, and we were going to go in a certain direction. And if when we just had our 1-year anniversary, and I, one of the things that I tell anyone who wants to listen is, it 100% is not what I expected. Better, worse, I don't know, but just certainly different, because you see an opportunity over here, so you take it. And then you see an opportunity over here that you never thought about, but it's an opportunity, so you take it. And then you think you're going to go in this direction, but the door's closed, so you got to go around it. And I think too often people just, this is my plan and I'm going to stick to it. And I think you have to have flexibility in your thinking, in your approach, in order to accomplish what you're capable of accomplishing.
Yeah. And you have to realize, like, it's like a battlefield plan. Like your business, like people talk, if I was talking to a group of young entrepreneurs, I would be like, okay, you could spend 6 months putting together a business plan, which is not, none of it's going to be real.
Right.
Or you could do like you could do a SWOT analysis. You could do like 3 or 4 things, do a SWOT analysis, figure out how much money you have and how long how much time that equates to. And then you just got to start. Right. And you have to, and I haven't always been great at this, you have to listen to what the market's telling you. Right. If the market's telling you, I don't care about this, even though you know they should care about it, guess what? They don't care about it. And so it's okay that they don't care about it, but you have to adjust now. You always hear that word pivot a lot, like in tech companies and stuff.
Yep.
And some of those pivots are massive pivots. Well, we were going to build widget X, but now we're building widget Y. But a lot of these pivots are just mental pivots. Hey, they don't care about that. These people aren't interested in this. This isn't a priority for them. I thought it would be. Okay, well, what else could we do? Doesn't have to be change your whole business. You just change how you're marketing and who you're selling it to or whatever, right? And you have to be flexible enough to do that. And that would be my biggest advice to myself for 10 years ago, right? Hey,
yeah.
Be more flexible about this. They don't care. It's fine. Just
we get stuck in our level of thinking, and it's hard to change. And part of it is, you mentioned the SWOT analysis and 7 months putting together the business plan. The more you do that, the more you become vested in doing it a specific way.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, one of the organizations I worked for brought in a consultant, and I didn't think he added a lot of value, but he changed my level of thinking with one thing that has stuck with me forever. He says, listen, don't shoot for a 10, shoot for a 7. Because if you shoot for a 10, you're going to be so vested in that approach. You're going to do everything and you're going to fail. Because if you shoot for a 7, yeah, you know what? If it works, great. And if it doesn't, you can be a lot more flexible and change. And so I shoot for 7s and I wind up getting a lot of 10s. Because I'm flexible with it, and so I think it's the deeper you commit to something, the harder it is to be flexible.
Absolutely, and I mean, we had a marketing consultant a while ago, and he sent us a shirt. It's like, done is better than perfect.
That's an awesome shirt,
and it's like, it was a super comfortable shirt too. I didn't like it. It was a V-neck, and I'm very hairy chest hair. It's a dimple.
But hey, listen, I got the same one you got on, so I got.
Yeah, I'm wearing a sweater under this t-shirt, but but it's so true. Like, and you can see it. Like, I have a buddy of mine who's a very successful businessman. He was my boss at one of my companies, and he's been vice presidents and CEOs of all these companies. But like, when he got laid off and he was kind of in between gigs, and he was going to start a business. I'm going to start a business, and then he's out, dropping $10,000 on it, building out his office to make it perfect. And you can just tell this guy doesn't want to actually be an entrepreneur, because that $10,000 could have built his website, could have done 50 things, logos. Yeah. And so, but it was just interesting because, you have to have that mindset of just, we got to move. Like, we just got to get this done, iteration, minimum viable product. Let's just get something out there and then let people see it, and then just keep trying to move it forward. Right. Yeah. So I guess that's question number 1. We go to question number 2 now. Why did you choose to do this business specifically? I know you were a franchise consultant before,
Yep.
But why this? Of all the things in the world you could have done.
Sure. Not a lot of things that I know, right? So historically, I am a training manager, an HR guy, a sales manager. So this is sort of the confluence of those 3 things. So it's what I know. And I'm a big fan in not extrapolating beyond my abilities and my knowledge. And so I know how to do that. And I knew franchise consulting because I was one. So it was just, bringing the technical knowledge of franchise consulting together with sort of the big picture skill set that I have, the managing people, the guiding, and that kind of thing. And so it seemed like a very natural thing. I would tell you, if you would give me 1,000 choices of businesses and I did the other 999, I probably wouldn't have been successful at them.
Sure.
So
so I'm going to go so then I'll just tag on that a little bit more. Why franchising?
Because I was in the space already. So the why I got into the space, candidly, is I didn't have a good idea 5-6 years ago when I left the corporate world. And so franchising enabled me to have a good idea. I think a lot of people are like that. We have this great transferable skill set, but you really don't have an idea. And I'm not the guy who can put together all the processes and systems and all of that. I'm the guy that can execute on them. And so it was having an idea that enabled me to really move forward.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a franchisee salesman for one of our clients at the Colorado restaurant show a couple months ago. And, he was saying, like, for owning a business, right? And I totally believe that he was true, by the way. Franchising, if you get you get hooked up with the right franchise system for you, right?
Yep.
It's probably the easiest way to become rich. And I mean, I have clients, like I have a client, they own 250 Pizza Huts and Taco Bells. They own a lot of the strip centers where their Pizza Huts and Taco Bells are. They have a probably $300 to $350 million a year business working at Pizza Hut and working with Pizza Hut and Taco Bell. You know what I mean? Like, and this is something that's grown up over the years. But, they're not out there thinking, I wonder if we could make a different kind of chalupa on our own.
Right.
We're going, get this thing staffed, get it open, get it paid off in 6 years, buy the building, move on. Let's go. More stores, right? Like, It's crazy.
Yeah, no, and that's what it is. There's a simplicity to franchising. There's a lot of complexities in it. But in general, you're taking a proven model that's been duplicated in a number of locations. And if you follow that methodology and you have the right skill set, it's the right match for you, you should succeed at a pretty high level.
Yeah. What do you tell people, your clients? Like, do you focus on, like, there's a lot of bad franchisors out there. When I say bad franchisor, there's just bad concepts or they're concepts that have kind of reached their time and they might not be as relevant anymore or whatever, right? Like, are you only doing kind of blue chip franchises or are you kind of open to all of them? And
yeah, it's a great question. There are certainly blue chip, but people fail in blue chip.
Of course.
There are certainly ones that are more emerging that people succeed fabulously in. So there are two things, right? It's understanding the person, and what the right fit is, and it's understanding the franchise well enough to believe in the product and service that they're providing, and in their level of support to the franchisees. So, like, for example, there are probably, 20, 30, 40 painting franchises, senior care franchises, and theoretically the product and service that they're providing, each of them is more or less the same. However, every step in the business, like how do you acquire clients, how does the brand help you, the CRM through the execution, the hiring, they're all a little bit different. So it's which are the best in that space. We try to stay out of fads. We try to stay out of something that isn't Amazon proof, because that's a challenge. And the negative about franchising is the riches are in the niches, which is a positive. But niches are generally not these huge areas. So what happens is if you're not careful, you get into an area and then 10 other franchise businesses follow. And then it becomes oversaturated. So you have to worry about that. But, when you think of children, food, pets, home services, home improvement, a lot of business services, marketing, coaching, like there are always opportunities in those spaces. It's just, is this the right brand?
Sure. Like 8 years ago, there were 10 frozen yogurt shops in my area. And now there's like one.
Right.
Yeah. And you see that, right? You see like they get a hot idea, especially the low cost into entry barrier ones, and then they just explode. But then only the strong is going to survive.
That's
And
right.
you saw that a lot with Subway too. They overdeveloped in areas, and then there were 4 subways in my area for a while, and now there's 2.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, yep. So you're not even really focusing just on restaurants. You're you're doing the whole gambit of franchises, right? Like daycare and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. So 3 main areas. You have the retail, but retail's food, it's business. I apologize. Health and beauty. It's automotive. It's children's. It's pets. Business services, which could be commercial cleaning. It could be digital marketing. Could be a coaching franchise, and then more the home services, which could be a senior care, but it could also be redoing your kitchen or your floors or your roof or your lawn for that matter, right? So we go through all 3 as we go through the process and figure out what the right fit would be for the clients, and then we'll introduce them to the brands and walk them through that way.
So my wife's a financial advisor, and one of the things of being a financial advisor is when you're investing for people, they make them take a risk assessment, right? Because they want them, because no matter what your friends are doing or no matter what your family's doing, if you're very low risk, you will be absolutely miserable if she was to put you into a portfolio that had a high amount of risk, because you would be tracking the ups and downs every single day. Do you, and vice versa, if you're a high risk person, you would be miserable in a bond fund, right?
Sure.
So I'm curious, do you do something like that for these people?
What's interesting about risk and franchising is most of the people, when we begin speaking with them, don't understand franchising. And so, sometimes we'll ask the general question about risk, but they don't have the context around it. So I have a book called The Perfect Franchise, and we send that out, and there's a big chapter on risk, and we'll talk to them about risk as we go through the process, but they can't calibrate it because they don't have the context initially. So don't really ask it that directly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have another question about this. Of the total percentage of your clients, how many of them would you say are buying a job because they got laid off or they hate their boss or whatever? What percentage of them versus what percentage are going to be empire builders? Like they're literally going, hey, I'm going to have 500 of these, Yeah,
it's a great question. And what you'll find is probably starts off about 50-50. Mm-hmm. And then reality, it's not always the same 50, but then, it will end at 50-50. But sometimes the people who are going to build an empire, water rises to its level, and people rise to their level. And like, if somebody wants to make $100,000 and they get there, they stop. Somebody wants to make 500, they get there, they stop. Somebody wants to make $1 million, they keep going. And that's the hardest part about what we do is I don't think people understand themselves well enough.
Sure.
And it manifests in a lot of ways. Like, we hear a really high commitment level from some people, and then it turns out they don't have that commitment level when it comes to real life. And we ask that 101 different ways, and you're going to need to do this, this, and this, and the brand will do it. That's the challenge. But yeah, a lot of people are looking for empires, and we usually caution them initially not to buy too much because it's easy to get excited. And even if you could afford it, bite off more than you can chew. You can always add later, whether it's the same brand or another brand, but you want to make sure it's something that you can manage, because if you bite off more than you can chew, you're going to struggle at the beginning. And
I would say the other thing is this: there's, they're going to try to sell you this. The franchisor is going to try to sell you, hey, you can buy 3 or 4 agreements, and we'll maybe give you a discount on one of them or whatever. They try to suck you in to get to 3 or 4 because they always want multi-unit most of them want multi-unit operators, right? My buddy Mike was like that. He bought a Liberty Tax, and he opened his first one and did great, and then he bought 3 more, and all of those were a drain on his lifeblood, They all were bad. None of them worked good. And now he's, after like 10 or 15, 20 years, he's back to just that one that actually made money, right? But he just, it just didn't end up working out for him the way it should have. But now he's got like a business. He's got a manager who runs it. And, he works a little bit extra during tax season. But, it's a nice bonus for him, the rest of the year. But, yeah, you don't want to – I guess my point was, you don't know how this is going to go. Like, you're hoping it's going to go great, but you could get a bad location. The economy could take a dump. 50,000 different things could happen. You don't necessarily want to tie up a ton of available cash that you could use to keep your business going for 6 more months on a bunch of, franchise licenses to open new stores that you may never need because you fail at this one. Like that 100K could keep you going for 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 10 months, whatever it is. So it's like, from a cash flow perspective, there's not a franchisor in the world that's going, hey, we're not making any more franchises. Can't tell you.
There'll be more opportunities. Yeah, I mean, I usually think 3. I never recommend anybody do more than 3 locations, 3 territories. But 3 is typically a good number. Sure. And it also depends on the franchisor. There's some franchisors that don't open multiple units. Even if they sell them, they only open the first unit. So, but it certainly depends. But what a lot of people want is the security to know, if I do want to open 3, I can, and then I could be done. Yeah. 2 or 3 will get me the income I want, and I could be done. And then when it comes to home services, it's a little different because it's zip code. So it's really, you're doing the exact same thing. You don't need another physical location, but you just get a little more scale by multiple locations.
So you had mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to ask about it. When you're looking at a franchisor, and I sell to a lot of franchisees and franchisors, but when you're looking at a franchisor from your perspective, what kind of from a technology perspective, do you have do you have kind of a list? I mean, it's going to be different for every type of business, right? But what's your how much do you pay attention to technology and services that they can provide for the franchisees?
Yeah, the number one thing, and there's a technology component to it for sure, is lead generation. Because for most businesses, it's, can you get me in front of the right people and enough of the right people for me to succeed at a high level? And so that's done a lot of through digital marketing, through the use of the CRM, social media, those kind of things. So that's primarily where we focus. In terms of the systems and processes, they'll have a lot of technologies, but we don't necessarily dig as much into that.
Cool. So you're mostly focused on sales, which is what the franchisor is mostly focused on too.
Yeah, the sales within the franchise system. What I want to know is that the brand, not every brand, but for the most part, that the brands are going to have really good lead generation for their franchisees. So they're going to drive clients either to a location or to reach out to the franchisee. If it's a home-based business, for example. Sure. That's going to be really important, that their supply chain, their product delivery is really good, that they support the franchisee in terms of hiring the staff that they need, that the franchisee is just not on their own, because a lot of people don't know how to hire people or where to find them, or it's a different skill set. If you're a corporate person and you're going into, home service, which is a little bit more blue collar, you've never hired, painters before, for example. Sure. And you want to make sure you have that level of support. So really the support is what we're focusing on. And technology is a component of that, but we're looking for the support infrastructure. We want to know that, and I tell all my franchisees this when they join, is that the franchisor does not know what your day looks like, what your life looks like, how things are going, except that they see the numbers. And they can interpolate based on the numbers, but your job as a franchisee is you're paying a lot of money to join the franchise. You're paying money on a monthly basis in terms of royalties, marketing fees, whatever it might be. Pick up the phone and say, hey, I don't know how to do this, or I did this and it didn't work. What would you do differently? I recommend brands that enable my franchisees to avail themselves of those services because they offer them in spades. That's what you're looking for, because if you're not going to take advantage of it, you're making a huge mistake as a franchisee. Like, that's what you're buying into. And by the way, it's not just the franchise or that you're gonna talk to. You're also gonna talk to a lot of franchisees who are already in the system, who are succeeding, and you're gonna pick their brains also, because it's rare that you're gonna be in a business where you can call up a competitor and say, "Hey, how you doing? How's this working?" But in franchising, you do, because you're not competing directly with each other. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're paying for, right? That's what the royalty fees are for, is the expertise. And you're right. I know for a fact, just from my previous positions, people aren't availing themselves of this stuff enough, right? Like, they just don't take advantage of it. They just go, okay. They just, I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I had one other question about that, but I lost it. So I will move on to my next. I'm in control. I'll figure it out. I'll remember it once we hang up, and I'll call you back. And I guess I'll go back to, I'll let you choose. Let's just do it for this one. What were some of the early challenges you faced? Because you obviously have gotten a lot of people working with you, but what were some of the early challenges that you faced when you started this business?
So the biggest challenge, which is kind of a war story, is, so I was in another firm and I wanted to build within their ecosystem. And we had an agreement to do that. And then they changed their mind a couple of times, and it was clear that I couldn't build something within their system. So we worked at a date for me to depart. And 2.5 months before that date, one day they just kicked me out of their systems. And so there I was, me and one person on my team, and we're like, okay, well, what now? So we were patently unprepared. We had to build a CRM from scratch. We had to create the relationships with the franchisors from scratch. We had to figure out the lead generation from scratch. So that was the biggest challenge I've ever faced professionally. And it was, in some respects, the most fun I've ever had. It significantly impacted my income for 2 or 3 months because I didn't have a business that I could run at that point. And I think that was part of what they wanted to accomplish, so they could check that box off. But it was great because we got to build everything from scratch in a very thoughtful way. Even though we were under a lot of pressure to do everything quickly, we were thoughtful about it. And so that has been great. And then so it was a challenge, but a learning at the same time. And then as the other challenge, or that I thought I'd face, is, how were we going to grow and how were we going to add people? And I'm really proud to say that I've never actively recruited anybody to the firm. I never reached out to anybody, any consultants, and said, come join me. We have 23 consultants, I believe, right now. They all reached out to me. Almost all of them I turned away a few times, and they kept coming back. And the reason I turned them away was I wasn't ready.
Sure.
And I don't want to make a commitment. Anytime I make a commitment, I have to look someone in the eye and say, this is the best place for you, and I'm going to do everything for you, and I'm going to do everything that I can to ensure your success. And I couldn't always do that. So we've just grown completely organically without any active recruiting. I mean, we've obviously responded when people have reached out to us, but that would be it.
That's cool. So, yeah. So essentially someone didn't want you to be successful when you were leaving, so they decided to throw a little wrench in your plan, huh?
I think that's right. They wanted to make it difficult for me. And I was a mensch when I left. When I was there, I was a mensch. I always did everything the right way. But just because you do things the right way doesn't mean the other person's going to. Sure. And, my father taught me a long time ago that you always behave like a gentleman, not because the other person is, but because you are.
Sure. That's a really great stand. That's cool. All right. So then let me ask you this question, the fourth question here. What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now?
The biggest challenge probably is what to do now. We've had a modicum of success, and it's sort of what direction to go in, and do we want to continue growing or not? And I'm very, very committed to not changing the ecosystem. And I have peers in my business that have 800 consultants. I don't want to do that because I can't support 800 people. I don't think I could support 50. I might be able to support 40. I know I could support 30. I know I could support 23. So it's when do we stop growing, just in terms of numbers, and what does that look like is the biggest thing, because I don't want to outkick my coverage in the sense that I can't provide the level of support that the consultants deserve and have come here for.
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting, right? And it's probably, I don't know. I mean, it might be one of those things where you go up to 40 and go, 40 is not really great. And then maybe you get lucky and there's some natural attrition and you find your sweet spot at 37 or 35, right? Or whatever it is. Because you can't, like, you just, I mean, I guess you could try to figure it out on paper, but,
But when you figure it out on paper, like we talked about earlier, you figure it out on paper and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And, and I heard this a long time ago, and I think it's true, is that every time your business doubles, all the processes, systems, ways of doing things become obsolete. And so we went from 2 people to 50 people, and from 2 consultants to 23 consultants. So there's been a lot of reinvention,
Sure.
As we go. And the nice part is, theoretically, we can get to 46 consultants and not have to reinvent ourselves again, which would be a gift.
Yeah, that's cool. It's true. And it's like, and this is true for definitely franchisees, and it's true for all of us. But 1 to 2 is the hardest, right? Like, that first doubling is probably the hardest, because you have to build, 1's so easy. I'm here. I can see what's happening. Everything's in front of me. 2 is, what are those people doing when I'm not there? The amount of systems you have to build internally, like, even if you're just going to open 2 yogurt shops, but the amount of systems that you have to build internally, including management systems, to just make the leap from 1 to 2 is so hard.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably the most amount of lift you could possibly do, because 2 to 5, like you said, it's the same. It's all the same stuff. I mean, I have an accounting system, whatever. It's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I've never thought of it in the way of, like, how you said it, like with the doubling of the business, right? But that's really interesting. Okay, so we're to question number 5 now, which is war story question. I just want a funny story, cringeworthy story. How did we get through it? Or maybe it's a story from one of your clients, like worst franchise mistakes. I don't know, whatever. But I just want a good, cringeworthy, funny, how did we get through it story about anything. It could be from a previous business or now. It's up to you, man.
Yeah, it's an often repeated story. I think, like, I recently had it's all about fear. I recently had a client reach out to me, and he joined a franchise, and I've had this happen a couple of times, where people have joined a franchise and then have never started it because they get fear. And it's, they hear something, they see something, they get nervous. I had one client who looked at 63 different locations and couldn't pull the trigger. And it's not funny. It's tough. And that's where I wish there was something that I or a franchisor could identify in the client, or that the client knew themselves well enough. I'm not saying that if you look at 5 locations, you're going to find the right location, but 63, there have to be a few good ones in there.
Yeah.
So that's it. And so I just wish that there was something that I could do to avoid that, right? Because, we try to do everything the right way, and it can't be 100% correct.
Well, and, it's interesting because I've had the same thing. Gone through the whole sales process, get the whole thing set up for people. They literally, all they have to do is go to their team and go, hey, instead of doing this thing, we're going to start doing it like this. And they pay for everything, and they just can't execute, right? They just can't execute. And it's like, it's fear. And, the only way I have found to you can't fix those people, by the way. It's unfixable.
You can't, because they have these self-limiting behaviors, and you can't get them past it. You're right. You just can't get them past it, which is a shame. And
I don't know how you identify that, right? Personality tests. Like, it would be interesting if I'm a big believer in those personality tests. Because we had a sales consultant back in the day, and he was like, look, we put these sales candidates through here because you're going to naturally like these sales guys. Sales guys are charming people. You're going to enjoy hanging out with them, but you got to go look at their record and look at their look at their LinkedIn, and then put them to this test. And this test will tell you if they're the right salesman for you. They might be an account manager, and you need a cold calling new business creator. So even though you love the guy, you can't use them because they're not going to be able to do your job. It'd be interesting to figure. It'd be interesting because and so much of this stuff, it's all touch and feel, right? It's just trying to understand a person and talk to them. It would be so wonderful if you could go to those people that didn't do well, run them through one personality test and go, okay, was there any trait that these three shared that I could identify on new people so we could avoid this? Because you feel bad for that guy because he probably spent $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, and
that's right.
And I guarantee you, everybody in his life was like, he's never, this is that lawnmower situation all over again.
Right.
Trying to find a lawnmower, it's just, whatever. That's funny. That is sad though. It's a bummer because entrepreneurship's like breathing for me. I'm just a very risk adverse person. I don't care. So I'm just going to figure it out. That's it. I'm just going to figure it out. And I wasn't even a software guy. I was a stand-up comic and a restaurant guy. And now I'm a
stand-up comic. So what's your best joke?
I can't tell them now. I haven't done a stand-up show since 2019, but prior to that, I hadn't done one since 2007. So from 95 to 2007, I was a full-time stand-up comic.
Wow. You're the real deal.
Yeah, I toured. I performed. I lived in LA. I did shows in Philly. I did shows up in New Jersey. I did shows in Delaware. I started in Maryland, in Baltimore, but then I quickly moved back to Colorado where I got my degree. And I just had friends out here, and I could get a day job easier. And then I started working at this comedy club in Denver called the Comedy Works, this famous club. And Chappelle. I mean, just all the biggest names go to that club. And then I just toured around the country for years, did festivals and stuff. I never got famous, but I was a one-nighter headliner, so I could do an hour and 10, and then I was a club feature. But I opened for tons of huge people.
Incredible skill set to be able to, walk in front of a crowd and be funny. Because in my experience, it's easy to make a joke based on something that you see. But it's so hard to go up there a plan for an hour. That's amazing.
Well, and it's funny is that because I had graduated from undergrad, hotel restaurant management, right? And then I started doing this thing 3 months later. And then I fell in love with it first night on stage. I'm like, this is the best thing ever, right? I got to do this the rest of my life. And then I went after it full bore. And it was wonderful. But the skills I learned doing that, because I was running my own business, doing my own marketing, creating my own material. It was a whole thing. I've used those comedy skills in business so many times. And it's helped my career so much. It's funny.
No, it's tremendous because you can communicate, right? That is the biggest thing for all of us. If we can communicate, we can succeed. And the improv and all of that is so huge in business. When we talk about flexibility, right? It's improvisation.
Yeah, it is. And it's I don't understand people who are afraid to do stuff. Business stuff, not jumping out of a plane. I'm afraid to do that. But normal, okay, because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Right.
So like, just go sign the lease. And then you take the next bite of the elephant, which is let's just get it built out. And then all of a sudden, guess what? You have a business. You know what I mean? Like it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, but that person's probably so overwhelmed because they're going, I'm nothing and I have to have a fully staffed and running business with customers in it tomorrow. No, you don't. You just got to sign that piece of paper. And then the next thing comes in front of you. And then the next thing that comes in front
That's
of you.
right.
And yeah, so I feel bad for that person. That's actually like, it's funny. The last two war stories have been kind of like a little bit more emotionally tough. Like, and I'm not like crying for this person, but I feel bad for them because I feel bad for them, not because they lost $100,000 or whatever they spent on this franchise fee. I feel bad for them because they can't execute on a dream of theirs.
On the dream. That's it. Like, I believe that our job is to make people's lives better. Like what we do as franchise consultants, it's ultimately nobody ever wakes up saying, I want to own a franchise. No, you wake up saying, I want my life to look like this.
Yeah. How do I get there?
Take one step and then you don't have the courage to execute.
Yeah.
And by the way, you may execute. We've all been there, right? Where we tried something and it didn't work, but we tried it and we gave it our best.
Yep.
Not giving your best is a regret.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a regret. Oh man. Well, this has been an awesome interview, Mark, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I think I learned a lot. Thank you so much for being on the show today. To all the Empire Builders listeners, as we continue to grow this new podcast of ours, thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you all soon. Take care.